time, I guess. No, okay, let me start over. We are putting together next year's schedule. So this is the unofficial announcement here. And that means that I need all of you to think about which books you'd like to read and send me suggestions. And of course, there was a Danish author who just died. So immediately I thought we should read her, and she's not been translated. So that's going to be the eternal problem, is the person whose book I want to read translated. So anyway, so I'm just inviting Mary. We have Mary too. All right, it is on my computer. It is, hi Mary, you're here. It is 7:02 p.m. So let's start officially, shall we? Yes. Welcome everybody. Once again, I am so happy to see faces, and faces I know by now. Most of you seem very familiar, which I hope will spark even more participation. So before we start, as usual, thank you to Scandesign, to Mary, who just disappeared right now, and to Lena, who's still here, and Northwest Danish Association, and everybody who's been supporting us this year. And with that support in our backs, we are trying to continue this to have, another year ahead of us. We're kind of doing it 1 year at a time. So that's why I really am encouraging all of you, think about which Danish authors you would like to read. And you don't have to do a lot of research. You can send me names, and then I'll be happy to do some research and see if they're translated. I'll also be happy to, look anything up you might want to talk about. But I really am encouraging you to help us determine what the schedule is going to look like for next year. And I know that Desiree and I have been fighting about Tove Ditlevsen, who has, kind of soared to heights of fame in the US right now. And Desiree is quite enamored with her, and I am too, but not with the books that have been translated to English, unfortunately. So she is also being discussed in other fora, and that's why I'm been kind of shying away from her. But if there is consensus about wanting to read Tove Ditlevsen and her book, well, addiction, and she talks about her marriage, she talks about her addiction, and her book is called Gift in Danish, which, as you may know, means both poison and married. A wonderful kind of constellation for that word. But yes, but so she is one author I know has been translated, but there are also others, and I am in touch with several translators. So I'm hoping that you can also come up with names, and please, you've got my email, and just send me, suggestions. That would be absolutely lovely, because, dear participants, we only have one more book club this year, namely the one in May. We are reaching the end of our run, so that's 9 books. So today is book number 8, and I have good news. Do you see how short the next one is? That's a real May book, right? So it's called After the Sun, and my Danish version here is 159 pages. So that should be very, very doable. Thanks, Heidi. Yeah. It is also strange and different, and that's why I'm raising the warning flag. It's short stories, and some of them are connected, and others you may find very interestingly strange. 5 different short stories. So I am so excited about trying that, because that's the first time we've done short stories and not an entire book. So let's see what happens. And with that, let's get started with our book for today. And of course, as usual, I am seriously hoping for a good discussion. And my first question, as you know, was the translation of the title. And I didn't really want to start with that first question, but I do want to return to it. I actually wanted to start with a quote from The Little Prince, or Den Lille Prins. I think I have 4 different versions of that book. And yeah, I also have it in French, actually. In the course of this life, I have had a great many encounters with a great many people who have been concerned with matters of consequence. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have seen them intimately, close at hand, and that hasn't much improved my opinion of them, is what the Little Prince is saying. Whenever I met one of them who seemed to me at all clear-sighted, I tried the experiment of showing him my drawing number 1, which I have always kept. Drawing number 1, the bottom one.
Yeah.
And I would try to find out. So if this was a person of true understanding, but whoever it was, he or she would always say, that is a hat. Then I would never talk to that person about boa constrictors or primeval forests or stars. I would bring myself down to his level. I would talk to him about bridge and golf and politics and neckties. And the grown-up would be greatly pleased to have met such a sensible man. So my first question to you is, why The Little Prince? Did you think about how very pervasive references to the Little Prince are throughout our Man in the Lighthouse? So I just thought I would start with that. I hope you've all read it. If you haven't, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry is also the one who wrote, Vol de Nuit, which is probably Flyers in the Night or something, Flying in the Night. An amazing French World War II author. So if you haven't read The Little Prince, I can highly recommend him. So everybody, please unmute your microphones and jump in. I don't know if you would like to start with The Little Prince, but I thought it was a great place to get started with the book. Maybe not if nobody has anything to say about it. Heidi?
I'm sorry, but I never read The Little Prince.
You never read it? Okay.
No, I didn't.
No? You
No.
know what? I thought everybody in Europe knows The Little Prince, but maybe they don't. Anybody who did none of you read it ever?
I've read it in French. Yeah, for French class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was a book I read to my kids. So Linda, okay, you're on the spot here. So you read it. So what do you think?
Well, I don't know why. Maybe I'm old and getting older by the minute, but I didn't remember that the Little Prince at the end had a snake bite him and committed suicide. That, maybe I just blocked it out when I read it. But I did find it interesting that I found it confusing that she's sitting in the wheelchair, locked away in some under basement, and yet the book is at her feet and she didn't try to get out. There was no sign of a struggle. And that was a plot hole for me, that the Little Prince was there on the floor, on her lap, wherever it was, and that there was no struggle. That was, someone she knew put her in this dungeon-like room, and yet she didn't struggle. So I found that a plot hole. I also found another plot hole. I don't want to go too ahead of myself. I will never believe that the woman walked into the scene, committed suicide. Oh, no, we may hear from her at another point. But she definitely maybe swam to wherever and is alive and cooking up some other interesting story. So.
And Nancy is nodding. Is that because they all want a happy ending? Come on, everybody. What if they all died? Okay, we'd all be really sad.
Yeah.
No, Linda. But okay, look at the book and tell me why, she's put everything out on the beach. She's folded her clothes. She's walked into hell's deep. And yet you're saying, ooh, somehow she magically was resurrected. The Little Prince died. He fell like a tree very
Yep.
slowly.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I think she was too clever to die. That was just a good way to shake it off. It's not as if, to me, the ending is open because I
Mhm.
don't believe that. No, that was too orchestrated a suicide. That was way too orchestrated.
Okay.
So I just saw that the ending of the book was open. I thought it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's nothing, these books that we're reading, I have to say, are totally outside the genre that I pick, but I really appreciate them and I really like them. They've stretched me.
Thank you. That is so sweet of you to say that. All right. Well, of course, I'm especially happy because I picked the book. So that's why I want all of you to be responsible for next year, right? Okay. So let's go back to the title. You've seen before, and of course, my prime example of that is Men Who Hate Women, translated to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, right? Swedish title, Men Who Hate Women. Ooh, sounds too serious. Let's translate it to something sensational. This in Danish is called a logbook of wrecked life. And we translated happily to The Man in the Lighthouse. Why? Did any of you think about that? What happens in translation? You know, the movie Lost in Translation. What's wrong? And why?
A lot's lost in translation. I'd say at least 20%, if not more, of the book is lost. I think it would have been great to have it just be wrecked life. You know, The Man in the Lighthouse, I thought was pretty insipid and pretty Hollywood. But I think if it had just been wrecked life, that would have been great.
That does make you wonder what else was lost in the translation.
Yeah.
The whole book.
And Mark Musari is a friend of mine, and he's a great translator. So I know, and he's done a lot of the cultural stuff really well, which is hard to translate. But I'm not getting it because, like you're saying, Linda, to me, it's also Hollywood. Man in the Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Well, the other
Whereas-
factor is that the translator may not have picked the title. The
Yeah,
title might have been changed.
For him. Yeah. Oh, Cynthia, you muted yourself. Cynthia, you muted yourself.
Here we go.
There you go. Thank you.
The title may have nothing to do with the translation. I really think the company that printed it or whoever was responsible for the color of the cover, what was on the cover, the title of the cover, any information about the author on the cover or whatever. So
yeah, that may very well be. But it just really surprises me because, as you all know after reading it, it is quite an intricate book, and it definitely doesn't focus on the man in the lighthouse. And when I was taking notes, trying to say, okay, there's so many themes in this book. It's like cornucopia of themes. And maybe if you saw the interview with him, which was about his other book, The Seventh Child, you found out he is himself an orphan, and we definitely have a short spell with an orphanage here. He's also a journalist, and that's why I think it's a hybrid genre to me. It's also a lot of journalism and investigation and kind of a mix, and that's where I wanted you to think about what's the difference between this book and the crime story we read by Edla Olsen, The Victim 2117. Because to me, they're very, very different. I don't know if you also found it different. Many of you have thought about that because we have read 2 crime stories here in the past months.
well, I found that I started the book and read probably a chapter and a half and then put it away for 4 days. Maybe I read more than that. I had to go back and review. And I just found that I couldn't drop that book. I had to keep going so I could keep everything in order. And I had to take notes.
Yes. Who is who? What is happening? Did everybody finish it? Because I mean, otherwise, spoiler, we are going to talk about the ending. Heidi?
I didn't finish it. I skipped to the end because I was thinking it went on too long for me,
Ah.
and I had wanted an ending a little bit sooner than that. So I started to read a couple of reviews, and one of the reviews that I read said, just go to the last chapter, then you'll find out. And actually, that's what I did. So I went to the last chapter. I found out who had done it. It made sense, and it saved me some time in reading. I read most of it, though. I want you to know that I got to the last segment, and I thought, I just can't do this anymore. It just moved too slowly. At first, I was really intrigued, and then I became impatient. And
Heidi,
so I
you know
felt
why
like,
I told
oh, go ahead.
one. Yeah. No, that's why I didn't pick his bestseller, you know, because that's 770 pages.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Anyway, I'll stop there.
Oh,
I didn't finish it the way I
Oh,
should have.
okay, everybody, what Heidi did was amazing. If you ever feel that a book is too slow, do what she does. Never give up on the book. That's the main thing. Go and read a little bit here, a little bit there, and read the ending, and then maybe go back if you feel like it. There is no right way to read a book. Emphasis. Linda. Linda? Oh, what's going on? Oh, I think she's having issues. I'm sorry. She was using her phone, so maybe she'll get back. Okay, let's go back then to the fact that Heidi left the confusion. Oh, there you are, Linda. I was going to ask what you think about the confusion of the I. Did any of you see the I as confusing? Because all of a sudden there was an I, a first person telling a story, but then you actually at the end pulled back and realize there's another I. How did you feel about that? Did you feel tricked, or did you feel fulfilled? Did you feel relieved? What do you think he obtained by that I switch?
I really like that. I've been kind of fascinated lately with the unreliable narrator that you find in books like Rebecca, if you've read that, and several that are quite famous. But throughout the book, I kept wondering, you know, who is telling the truth and what is the truth here? And I found that very fascinating. I was very grateful that it was divided into parts, because I thought that helped with kind of the sense that it was dragging a bit. And I thought it was necessary to be this long, because it is so, you know, interwoven, all of the things that are going on. And I must admit, I was suspicious about Agnes maybe on page 138, and she didn't have me fooled. So poor dear woman. But I thought it was a very intriguing book. Crime novels has not been in the past my choice of genre, so it's an all new thing for me to approach. I thought the victim book we read earlier was probably much more specifically of the genre. This one is sort of multiple genre, and it is very intriguing that way too. But most particularly, I thought the idea of the unreliable narrator was important, and you know, very much part of their character too. I mean, you know, that these people are a bit, you know, weird or unstable, and just not, you know, reliable people to listen to imagine you're getting any idea of what really is going on. So it's a very tricky book for me to read. I had to be sure I read it, not sort of as a bedtime thing, because that just didn't work for me. I had to read it, definitely sat down and read it in the day, and really wished I had time to read it a second time, because it is, quite literary in many ways. A lot of themes and imagery and just characterization that was quite nicely developed. And I was sorry I didn't have a chance to go back and really take notes. I had begun to put in little sticky notes, but I didn't get very far with those at the end. So, but very nice book. So
That's
I would
great.
hope you would choose some of the same authors and read some of the other things next time around. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, but the unreliable narrator, I love that, because I also was fooled by that eye the first time I read it. Okay, Agnes, the little lamb of God. Come on, everybody. And she's a minister. It's got to be the sweetest thing on earth, right? And then, whoa, you really wake up at the end and say, oh my God, religion can be used in many different ways. Linda, you're back.
Yeah, I'm getting very bad reception here.
Okay. But we
I'm
can
getting
hear
bad
you.
reception. Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. My problem with the book is that I heard it on Audible, and I will not do that anymore for any book club. I'm going to buy the book and be done with it, because I could never go back and
No.
reference, who the characters were, like you can with a real book.
Mm-hmm.
So Audible doesn't work with book clubs.
No, and especially not when there's so many characters. And can we return to Agnes, please? Because I made this flippant statement about religion being useful in
Yes.
many ways. How do you see Agnes as a character, everybody? She is a minister, but she definitely transforms. And then we realize what her tragedy is. And that kind of leads us to the theme, maybe the most predominant theme of the book, namely that of revenge, retaliation. And we've talked about that earlier in books. So how do you see Agnes? Is her revenge vindicated? Is it okay? She's been mistreated by these bullies, and what she does, is that okay? And the way she does it? Any thoughts about Agnes as a very kind of, I'd say, active agent in the book, even though she's the one pulling the strings behind very discreetly?
One of your questions is about revenge. And I,
Mhm.
from my own personal point of view, feel that her revenge was totally justifiable. And having read books from Iceland and Sweden and Norway and now Denmark, I would say that there's a thread in the history of the sagas that indicate that revenge is appropriate. It may not be appropriate now in what we call 2022, but personally, I felt her revenge was, she waited a long time to get it. It was well thought out, and I felt that she had earned her revenge. So
I sort
have
of wondered if Agnes had been a mother herself, would she have sought revenge against another mother? Because Agnes was never in a position to protect a child. But I did figure out early, before the end, that I felt she was the one that did it. But even, Agnes, to me, was a sort of a troubled person. I mean, why would she marry who she married? What an unlikely partner for her if she was the kind of pastor I have, for example.
And Cynthia, I thought it was interesting that I don't know if you are, but I'm not capable of quoting long passages from the Bible. I mean, I definitely recognize them when I read them, but she is able to use the Bible in an active way to actually vindicate her actions. and say, okay, this is what Jesus said, and this is what it says in the Bible, so then it is okay, and my soul is pure. How did you feel about that? Because you could, of course, and I hope you did, relate it to the Me Too movement and say, right now, it seems as if, okay, we are getting back, we women are getting back at them, the men who've been abusive in any way. And right now we have Johnny Depp and his ex-wife in court, et cetera, et cetera. So things are happening on that level. I don't know if you thought about that, if that makes it more relatable, better, more right, more justified, Heidi?
I think revenge like that is just fine for a murder mystery. But I'm thinking, in real life, that it's not okay. So yeah, I get where she was coming from. She'd been damaged. She'd been injured beyond repair and hadn't been able to have children and had an abortion. Or I think she had an abortion from what I had read.
Yeah, she did have an abortion.
Yeah. So, those are all horrific things to have happen as the result of these, these two bullies who seem to have free reign in that community. So yeah, it was awful, and I get the revenge part, but I mean, it's okay for a murder mystery, because I think that's sometimes a theme in murder mysteries, revenge of some sort, or, retribution or something. But, you were bringing up present day kinds of situations, and I don't want to be judgmental about it, but I can't understand it. I can't understand the revenge motive of hurting someone. So.
And everybody, she's taking out her revenge on the mother of the perpetrator, from probably or potentially the point of view that this mother protected her son. And like Cynthia was saying, okay, she doesn't have any kids herself. So what do you think about that? Is that okay?
She doesn't have any kids. She doesn't have any kids because Pele raped her and damaged her, and therefore she could not have kids. So to me, if someone does that, I'd say, well, the heck with Western religion. I'm going down the heathen, the Odin way. No. I mean, I personally think she was justified that this guy raped her and now she can't have kids. That's a terrible thing. So I get it. I mean, I'm not saying I could do it, but I can understand it in the story.
Yeah.
I could see wanting to take them down because they've done horrible things to a lot of people. I can see stopping them and, getting them off their positions of power. Murder, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of different.
Yes, Sandra. And I think it's a really interesting, I mean, we had that whole scenario, right? That she's kind of walking in there, the mother, the 90-year-old mother who was dying, according to Malin or Marie.
Yeah.
I can see that she's dying. She's dying slowly. I can see it in her eyes. So she's maybe walking in there, committing a kind of suicide and accepting that. She almost had a smile on her face, remember, when they found her corpse there. So it seems to me like, that kind of revenge by proxy. So I'm going after the mother instead of going after the guy who actually did it, who's been floating on top of the Danish society for so long. I kind of have a problem with that. And then you're trying to look at it in the way that, okay, but maybe she accepted it as her fate after trying to do good by writing Vigo into the will and kind of making amends in that way. I don't know. Any other comments on that? I mean, does anyone feel one way or the other about that theme? Erik, what do you think?
Well, I didn't read the book, to be honest with you, but as far as revenge goes, if you read in some of the sagas, even though there's a lot of revenge going on, maybe I'm reading something wrong in between the lines, but like, for example, in y'all's saga, it almost seems like the author, whoever it was trying to say, you know, all of this revenge is destroying our democracy on the island. So I think that's something to be considered. You know, I don't know how I come down on this particular case. It sounds like, you know, she did what she felt she needed to do. But if people don't get a legal judgment and, you know, some consequences, then society doesn't fully deal with it. And then every individual becomes responsible for getting their own justice. That doesn't work very well.
No.
No, and we also saw, okay, so that's of course where I want to link it to what Erik is saying here and kind of the bigger picture, because we also see the father and Paul killing Viggo's mother. So we kind of have, you know, we have multiple murders, right? We have the first accident where Viggo's grandfather accidentally kills the little boy Aaron. And then we have the kind of retaliation of the father and son killing the mother. And then finally or Viggo's mother. And then finally we have that third killing, which may be a suicide. So we have a nice little triangle there. Did you feel that any of that, I mean, some of you have said, yeah, it's okay, or no, it's not quite okay. What about the way that the father, the tyrannical father in the Blegman family? Oh, and by the way, Blyman means pale man. So it's kind of like maybe also some kind of accusation. How do you feel about that and his actions as a father teaching his two older sons to be such bullies?
Yeah.
Is it also relatable? Is that something you can say, oh, wow, that is just taken right out of everyday life? Because to me, okay, and I'll throw that out, it seemed as if those two brothers were a bit exaggerated. I was trying to relate them to politicians I know, and I can think of one, but I thought that they were maybe just a bit exaggerated, but maybe that's because politics today are becoming exaggerated compared to, I guess, what we are used to expect in the way of decency. I don't know if any, Marcia, do you want to comment? You're saying yes.
Well, and that was one of the things that I thought was interesting, was the whole the ramifications of what if they were found out? What if their history came forward? And it just, it just smacked of what's happening today and the political environment in which we're living. And I thought, oh man, now we have to visit it in a book.
Because we are so tired of it in real life, right?
Yeah.
I found there were so many themes in this book, I could hardly keep up. You know, there were political things, there were mental health issues, there were how we take care of old people. It took a lot of, I couldn't even get it all sorted out, but he certainly covered a lot within the book. And, you know, when you talk about religion, well, I thought about our previous president and how religion was used, to me, inappropriately in our country politically at that time. I did find a couple places of humor that I liked, though. When referring to the prince, the book, someone said, well, it's not exactly a Stieg Larsson. And I thought that was cute. And then they referred to their country in a country where faith in authority sets a world record.
Yeah.
I thought that was rather clever too. I didn't find too many other places to laugh about, but I did catch those. I don't understand why Donald Duck was brought up often as a cartoon. Is that just because it was a popular cartoon in Denmark?
Oh, yes, it was, but it's also because it was the comic book that was in the basket
Right.
when he went over, went down
Okay.
the steps. So Agnes could kind of appropriate that for herself. So I think that was like, yes, oh yes. I grew up reading Donald Duck every week. That was Tuesday going down to buy it, the new one. That was definitely a real custom, that my dad knew that on Tuesdays we went to buy Donald Duck. But back to what you were saying about politics, I like that because to me it's also very relatable, and yet I think a very clear theme that there is bullying, there's corruption, there's secrecy, there's all these power games. And especially when you have two people who are brothers and who are in it together and trying to have each other's backs. And that was very, very distasteful. And I thought very difficult to read because it resonates too much. Unfortunately, in my mind. But you're right, Cynthia, that's just one of the many themes. And you mentioned other themes. I mean, of course, religion, but also how they treat the elderly. What did you think about that? How did he approach that theme of how do we deal with older generations in our country? Because he does say, and not in jest, Denmark is the happiest country in the world. It's not. It's number 2. Finland is happier, which is very strange. But so Denmark is number 2. And it is definitely a country with, I guess, yes, a faith in authority. And you know why? Because you can't hide from authority in Denmark, because it's such a tiny country and it's so well organized and ordered. You cannot hide. I remember moving to the US and thinking, wow, this is the country where if you don't want to pay child support, you can skip to another state and disappear. That would never happen in Denmark. You don't get away from anything. Nancy, did you give up? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I thought that it was basically the theme of sort of an unraveling of the civilized realm, and that all of these components about, the orphans and the elderly and the media were all just sort of indicators of that. So to me, it was basically, the theme of, death and revenge, but also a matter of unraveling of, the civilized realm. So that's all.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And I think that everybody, I mean, look at how how he describes the care of the elderly. What is it that he focuses on? And this is Denmark with the welfare state, that takes care of you from cradle to grave. What is he saying about taking care of our elderly population?
He says that there are levels to it because the elderly lady was not in what you would call a state-run thing, but in a private-run, elite kind of facility. And also in this book, there was a lot of imagery, like Pelly and his paws. There was a lot of animal imagery there that I took, aside from Donald Duck, the bear imagery of these pretty vicious brothers.
And the canary. What did you think of
canary.
the canary, the yellow canary? How did you see that?
There was the imagery using the color yellow, various colors really, but that was one of the things, if I were able to go back and read the book again, I would sort of follow the use of the color yellow with the canary and the house of the 2 brothers as they were growing up in the neighborhood, and quite a number of things yellow throughout the book. The little bit of the raincoat and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, the canary was certainly interesting, and it truly was a little bit maybe tied in with what was going on with the whole Donald Duck, bird thing too. So quite interesting.
Okay, everybody, what is usually, I mean, where do you see a canary? When I say canary, what does it make you think of?
Canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
It reminds
Yeah.
me of all the nursing homes now that have their own little cages with a variety of beautiful birds for people to watch.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it reminds me of.
Coal mine. Yeah. The first sign of danger, right? And of course, we have a couple of canaries. And one thing, I don't know if you thought about that, why did the canary disappear so frequently in the home of Vigo when he was living with his grandparents? We had nonstop canary deaths. Why was that? Did any of you think of that? All the
They did.
canaries disappeared?
They said the grandmother sort of often was well-intentioned, but that harm often came to things, you know, that she would be caring for, which would include the canaries. So that was kind of an interesting thing regarding her character.
Yeah.
And why did harm come to them?
Pardon me?
Why did harm come to these pure little yellow canaries?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, it's interesting when the Agnes's husband was out actually with, you know, his bow and arrow when they were missing their canary. Quite an extreme image of this man out looking for the poor little canary. So why did harm come to them under the grandmother's care? Very interesting to think about her character and that part of it. Poor little Vigo and the daughter and just everything that she came near had, you know, tragedy befall them. So.
Okay, my guess. Marcia, your guess.
Oh no, I don't have a guess. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk about something else, but I'll wait.
Let me just prove that. It's the grandfather. The grandfather who is the meanest guy on earth. He kills those canaries because he killed the joy in their life, because he's so mad that his daughter went and got pregnant and is a single mother, which is another theme, of course. But what is it like to be a single mother in those years compared to now? So that's why he kills it off. And that's why it also becomes a symbol of the little boy who finally gets a canary, and then he's killed wearing his yellow raincoat. So it all comes together. The frail creatures, the nice little creatures. He is a nice little boy, fast on his feet. He is killed off. So it's kind of like a very sad statement on the part of the author that the weak shall not inherit the earth. If we want to go biblical, the weak will definitely just be erased from this earth gradually. All right, Marcia, back to you.
I was very intrigued by the homicide boss and his number 2 man.
Yes.
They seemed like an old married couple. That they had been together and they knew each other's, you know, movements and what to expect. And it reminded me a little bit of the UC Adler Olsen books, when they were trying to find somebody to play Karl Mork in the movie. And so I had an image of what Karl Mork, after reading all the books, what he should look like. And then the person they selected for the movie was nothing like I thought he should look like. So when I'm thinking of the homicide boss and the number 2 man, I already know what they look like in my mind.
Like that, Martha. You know that UC Adler Olsen was very, very unhappy with their choice. It's Nikolai Lie-Kos, who's a very, very good actor. And I thought he was so wrong for the part too. But he was chosen for the first 4 movies that UC had sold the rights to. And then UC stepped in and said, okay, I'm not selling the rights to the remaining books, and I want to pick the protagonist. So Nikolai Lee Kos is out, but you can see him in other movies. I mean, he's also done American movies. Not as
Yeah,
famous.
I think a better actor for number 1 and number 2 would have been the actors in The Bridge. Bowen,
Yes.
The Bridge.
Oh yeah.
That is
Yes.
more believable
Yeah.
for actor,
Yeah.
you know, Detective 1 and Detective 2.
Yeah.
Definitely, The Bridge had it better. I mean,
They-
Nikolai is just too good looking and not believable as
Oh, the Great
that
Barrel.
kind of yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting that you do that, that we do that, that we put images on, because it takes forever to find out that he actually has a name and that he's
Right.
not just a function. Okay, and then he's called in sports, right? Which is about as common as it can be. It's a very normal Danish name. So why do you think there's such stereotypes? But they're like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. They're like any detective with a great sidekick, right? He really, in my mind, turns them into stereotypes. Okay, they're supplementing each other's sentences and speech, and they don't have to talk to communicate. They are just stereotypical pair, I think. I don't know if you felt that way, or maybe I was just being too critical, but I thought they were funny in being so stereotypical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And threatening at the same time, because they definitely seem to edge closer to the resolution, right? And threatened the two brothers that were in power. And can we just do a little tangent there? And I can ask you about Ove. One of you said that it was incongruous that he was married to Agnes, who was such a nice person on the surface. And Ove is not a very nice person. So why is he in there? What is his purpose? What is his function? What do you think about Ove the spin doctor? Because I think he has a huge critical role to play. I think that's where Erik Valeur's journalism, comes in through these characters, also through the detectives, Marcia. I think so. But what did you think about Ove the spin doctor? What does he represent in the play? Okay. Anybody? What do you think? He is
He
totally.
He was definitely a counterbalance to his Lutheran minister wife, the total counterbalance. And so I think it made a sharpened image of who she was juxtaposed to who he was, and then taking it back like how many years to the little gang of kids that wound up being the center of this story.
But he was a good guy back then because he defended Viggo. Heidi?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I was going to say something very similar, that he was a counterbalance to her, because he was a businessman and he was out to make a buck, and he didn't really care. It didn't seem to me like he really cared about the older individuals that he was providing services for. And I also didn't necessarily agree with his philosophy, but that was, that's like neither here nor there. But it seemed like Agnes was supposed to be so pious and such a good, caring person, and I just thought he was a jerk. So just, I don't know. He didn't seem very sensitive to the people around him, and she was, of course, very, caring, supposedly very caring about those around her.
But she had to have known he was a shyster.
Yes. That's saying it.
I think she
just
did.
the way
I
it
think
is.
the last chapter when she, tells us everything, I think she did.
Yeah.
I thought that when they called him, they referred to him as sort of a person with the emperor's new clothes attitude. I thought that was a nice summary of his behavior as well. And, I can't remember enough of the detail, but I know the author put in information about sort of his development from a child into an adult. And I just can't remember the detail of that.
what happened was that he found that the power of words was what saved him. He was not big, he was not a fighter, but he had words and he could convince people that he was right. So to me, I don't know, Nancy, you stepped down. Did you want to say anything about him? Because, oh, you've muted yourself, dear. Nancy.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
I thought he was beyond a jerk even. I thought he was quite sinister. Isn't he the one who had the polar bear skin somehow in his home? And I just thought,
Right.
yes. I thought he was really a sinister, dark person, and he was somehow able, because of his words and because of his wife, to look otherwise. So I thought he was definitely, the wolf in sheep's clothing. So
I think so too. And money, right? He had tons of money.
oh
He
yes,
was doing,
yes.
yes. And I think that he represents the worst in our society, the ones that are just empty words, the ones who seduce. So I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you thought about this. He, the seducer, the spin doctor, the one who can put labels on everything. And boy, do we know that kind of people. Everything has to have a label and then it's okay. He is married to somebody who can put religious labels on everything and get away with that pious facade. So I think that they're a very interesting couple. And it says in the book, maybe you've thought about that too, that she gets to be more and more silent, says less and less, and seems to be withdrawing into herself, maybe finally being tired of his verbosity and the fact that he can just talk his way out of everything and convince people to do exactly what he wants. He is, to me, a very dangerous seducer because he's a seducer with words, not like Pelle, who is a violent man. He's black and white, but Ove represents the guy who is an eel slithering in between the black and white and gray zones in life.
Yeah.
And a really great picture of one who's fitting into politics in the best way. And who would have come out with the fortune, right? You would have been so good if the will had not disappeared and if everything had gone as he had planned. And now we don't know, but I mean, there is a will at the end. So Ove is also, a sharply drawn character. I think what he does, I mean, you keep saying it's confusing, Cynthia, and I totally agree because there's so much, but it seems like he wants to draw so many characters. So then what about Malin? What did you think of her? See, we kind of bypassed her and gone directly to Agnes. Malin, the one who is crooked physically, maybe not mentally. How does she play in? What does she represent in the book? She's an enigma. She kind of, we weave in and out with her and she says, oh, my purpose. And then all of a sudden you realize she's paid for by the widow, by the old Mrs. Blyman. And that's why she's in the house. What is her purpose? And I mean, we have to conclude, because time just flies, but what is her purpose in approaching Viggo in the lighthouse? And how does that connect to all those omens of death, the dreams, the portents, those shared dreams, and the ensuing deaths of all the people who have had the dreams? Where does she fit in? And what do you think about those dreams? What is that theme of death that is also pervasive in the book?
Well, I sort of see that your question really has two parts for me. Because first of all, I called her the neighbor. until I got more information. And I kept waiting to get more information about her because, you know, she'd been there 3 months, and why was she there? And she was in a house that was falling apart. And to me, the dreams were, that was very interesting. It was very interesting because, you know, when you, if you ever have explored people dying or death and know some of their last thoughts or their last words or their last dreams, it was just interesting. Probably for me, it was a little far-fetched to say that, you know, those 6 people would have the same dreams, but I have 3 sisters who would tell me I'm wrong. So,
Sisters.
yeah, sisters. And her name was actually Marie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she gave the name Malin, or I don't know how you pronounce it. I found that I didn't expect someone who was a night watch at a nursing home to have the, oh, what would I say? I don't want to say intelligence, but the ability to do what she did.
Change identity and disappear. Yeah.
Yes. But then, of course, you hear more about her own history later. So you realize that she has been involved in a lot of things that required more than just being a watch person in a nursery, in a nursing room, or nursing home, I mean. I think she ended up being in love with him.
Yes.
You know, I think she really, really did love him. And I think she did commit suicide because of that. I think that was something that just moved her.
All right. But she didn't have the dream, did she? Okay. She killed 3 women. You got that, everybody. So 3 women that had disappeared and were connected to her name. That's why she changed her identity. Heidi?
Well, I was going to say that I thought her function in the book was as a witness. That she was a witness, and she was also like kind of like an overseer. It's just someone who had the vision of the past and the present. And she seemed to be able to make connections that we wouldn't have been able to make as readers with her knowledge and her comments. So I didn't really, I figured I missed something about her at the end by not reading the book completely to the end. So
she also was in kind of connection with the fox, right? And the foxhole as a symbolic rendition of where you hide. So there's also something going on there, Laura. So we did have that going for us. Yes. Linda, you pulled back?
No, my computer is not working right. The sound keeps going off. The hand keeps going up. No, I have nothing to say about this right now.
All right. Fine. No, but I really think that, yes, she is the witness. She is the one who shows us everything. And did you notice that Viggo knew she was there? He knew she was crouching in those bushes, watching him. He knew she was there. She couldn't be the murderer because she was there on the night that the widow disappeared, etc. So they kind of were witnesses, mutual witnesses of each other's actions. And she was also the one leading us. And that's why, yes, Cynthia, it was 2 questions, but I think that they're connected because she was the one leading us to those 7 omens of death. And she was taking them with her, trying to relieve him of the burden. She felt that it was a burden to him to have those 7 kind of testimonies that were similar, and she wanted to relieve him. So she let the house take them down into some kind of doom or whatever, disappearance, and the house slid down. So I thought that was very symbolic. She destroyed the evidence that was making him upset because I think, as you said, she was in love with him. So maybe the end is maybe she was in love with him and is swimming happily along around a bend, or maybe she was in love with him and let herself drown in Hell's Deep, because the witch that she rented the house from said, don't ever go near that place. So there was another omen. So lots of portents and omen. And of course, the big question, which we can all keep thinking about as the night progresses, is, do we believe in dreams? Are they omens of what's to come, or are they castigations of what has passed, or what are they? I think that that plays a big role. And I think it's interesting that the author chooses death to come out of these dreams. He could have chosen happy dreams, but on a line, if I may finish the circle, on a line with the little prince, he dies at the end. And here we also have, okay, Viggo living on, but he's dead inside, and definitely a lot of death around us at the end of the book. So that's kind of where you start with The Little Prince, which I will highly recommend. It's a very quick book to read, but it's very thought-provoking too. Well, everybody, unless somebody has something to add, I want to say thank you. Thank you for a wonderful discussion. It is such a complicated book in so many ways. And I think it's such a hybrid genre, because I think he's part author, part journalist. And I think he's trying to cram so much into the book that you have to sort through strands, and it can take a while for you to feel I'm on top of this book and I actually know what's going on, because he keeps dangling that carrot saying, oh yes, and we will learn about that later, as we will find out, as she knew. So that's a different way of writing than we might be used to.
Have you
And
read his
also-
other book?
Right.
Yes,
Oh, the new
I
one.
have.
Which I-
They're very similar. His best-selling novel that's also been translated, The Seventh Child, was equally fascinating, and with so many things going on, and you don't find out till the very end how it's all come together, and it's like that last piece of the puzzle you really want to find. So so that seems to be his style of writing. Yes. And
I
thinking.
really appreciate your questions. They are so well thought out and get so much out of the book, so much more than, you know, plot, characters. It digs deeper. The questions are really good. So thank you.
think if I had a lollipop, I would give it to you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. I so appreciate being with you. And please, like I said, good suggestions for new books, something you want to read, something you want to talk about. And you can also, you know, if you don't know any authors, send me themes that you'd like to discuss. And then I'll see what I can do, and we can work together. So thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening.
Thank
Be
you.
safe. Be safe.
Bye.